So welcome today to another beautiful tutorial, and today I'm going to be talking about the Waves SSL E-Channel. So SSL here means solid state logic, so it's obvious and it's written here, and this plugin is made by Waves. So we have so many companies who have made plugins that look exactly like this. So this is actually an emulated plugin. I'm going to break down the tutorials for this plugin into 4 sections. So we are going to have the filter or EQ section. We are going to have the dynamic section, which comprises of the compressor, your gate or expand, and we are going to have the input and metering section or mastering section. So, and lastly, we are going to have the routing section, where I talk about the different ways audio can come into this plugin and go out of this plugin. So that is one aspect many people do not know about. So we have 7 of them, but I'm going to talk about just 3 of them, at least the one I fully have an understanding of. Yeah, welcome back. So the first thing we have is our EQ section. So this EQ section, this is a 4-band EQ with 2 filters. The filter comprises of the high pass filter, which is this, and we have the low pass filter, which is this. So the low pass filter has been designed as a 12 dB per octave filter that cuts from 22,000 Hz to 3,000 Hz, while the high pass filter, which we can also call the low cut, is a 18 dB per octave filter which cuts from 16 Hz to 350 Hz. Let's listen to how it sounds like when we activate these filters. So you can hear that the low end has been totally eliminated. So what you can hear is frequency from 350 Hz upward. Do you get? This is quite extreme though, but it might sound good for you. So the next part is the low pass filter. So the low pass filter basically does the opposite of what the high pass filter does. So it cuts everything on a high frequency, so you can hear more of the low frequency from 3.0 3000 Hz basically. If you listen to the sound, it sounds muffled, it sounds not clear. So when I open it up, it sounds clearer and all of that. So for those people who wants to achieve a radio kind of effect, so what you can do is take this to 3K and take this to 350, and you can get that lo-fi radio effect. So I'll come back to this split and I'll let you know what it does. The next thing I want to talk about is the EQ section itself. So like every other EQ, this channel strip has 4-band EQ. It has a high filter, high mid filter, low mid filter, and a low filter. So basically this high filter comprises of frequencies from 16K to 1.5K. That's its range. So, and you can have the gain. This is the gain, while this is the frequency selector here. So you can select frequency at, let's say, 10K, and you can increase the frequency. Let's hear how it sounds at 10K. You can hear the clarity. And so another thing this section has is a bell. So I talked about the bell, what the bell looks like and what a high shelf looks like in previous videos. So but I'm still going to talk about it again. So this is exactly what a high shelf looks like. This is exactly what a high shelf looks like for those people who are just new to audio and mixing. So this is what a high shelf looks like, and this is what a bell looks like. So let's say at 10K is a bell at 10K, and this is a high shelf at 10K. You can see the difference. It has different curves to them, and the sound would definitely be different. So that's for that. So once this bell is on, this frequency, it's actually a high frequency, but it has a bell shape. So once it's off, it's a high frequency, but it has a shelf shape. You get. So The next thing is the high mid frequencies. So the high mid frequency has its gain and also has its frequency selector, and it ranges from 7k hertz, 7000 hertz to 600 hertz. Yeah, so and it also has its Q. Its Q ranges from 0.1 to 3.5. Yeah, so and also has its gain knob. So the high mid frequency has three knobs. We have the gain for the high mid frequency, we have the frequency selector, and notice that when you have a high mid frequency, they're always in bell shape. They don't have the high shelf shape, except it is stated in that plugin. So when you work with bands like this, just know that it is bell shaped. So it has its frequency from 7000 hertz to 600 hertz, and it also has its Q from 0.1 to 3.5. Yeah, so and it has its gain from minus or plus 15, so minus 15 plus 15. So but when you have a tight Q like 3.5, the dB changes. So you have up to plus or minus 18 dB. Yeah, I know it is stated here that it is minus 15 dB, but it is minus 15 dB when you are at around 0.1 to around 1.5. But when you have a smaller Q, then you start having more peaks in terms of volume increase. So and from technically it sounds louder, that particular frequency sounds louder. So you have minus or plus 18. So the next part is the low mid frequency. The low mid frequency basically has the same controls as the high mid frequency. The difference here is just the frequency selectors. So the frequency is from 200 hertz to 2.5k hertz. So it's stated here 2.50. So 2.50 basically means 2.5, and 0.20 means 200 hertz. So that's basically how this mid and low mid works. So the next thing you have is your low filter. So this low filter basically works exactly how the high filter works. So the difference is that the frequency selector is designed for low end. Instead of having 1000 hertz, you have frequencies from around 30 hertz to 450 hertz. You get, so and you can also increase the gain level of some of this stuff. So I forgot to play some of these things so you can hear the difference in sound. Mama, shake it away from my phone. Shake it, mama, shake it, mama. Mama, shake it, mama. Shake it away from my phone. So that's how it sounds more from the air. So but that's the low end of this EQ, and they sound pretty decent. They sound really good. To be honest, they sound really good to my ears. Yeah, so they also have the bell button here, and the bell button does exactly what this guy does here. Once the bell button is off, you have a low shelf. Once the bell button is on, you have a low frequency that has a bell shape. Like I showed you before, I'm going to show you again. If you have the button turned off, this is what you're going to have. Exactly like this. If you have the button turned on, this is what you're going to have. So I believe you understand. So that is it for the EQ section. So the next thing we are going to talk about is the dynamic section. So the dynamic section is this area of the channel strip. We have the ratio. This is very explanatory. We have the ratio 2:1 and all of those things. Then we have the release. So the thing about the attack here, it is quite fixed, so you can be very fast or a bit slow. You get, so and the release has its knob, so you can tell how long you want the release to take effect. Then you also have the threshold. The one thing you need to know about this plugin is that the higher you go for threshold, the more it compresses and the more it auto gains. Yeah, it apply gain automatically to compensate for volume loss. So let's just listen to how it sounds. So while it is trying to compress, it is also trying to bring up the balance the level of the vocal, so that basically compensates for what is being lost in terms of level of volume. So that is basically what this aspect is about. It's a compressor, and it's very easy to use though. So you all you need to do, identify how you want it to sound, and just take up the threshold. So this is quite slow in attack, so let me increase the attack. Let's see what's happening. You see it's speaking more, so that's basically for the dynamic level. So this meter here shows you the gain reduction happening to your audio when you compress. So when there's no compression active, so they might push it up, the more compression happens. So basically that's how that works. It's as simple as that. So the next aspect we have is the expand or gate. So I think everybody knows what this does, but in case you don't know, so the gate, what it does is, like the RVOX, if you have watched the tutorial, you can check to know more about the RVOX. This is the gate here. It's designed to work with one slider. Once the threshold of that audio is above the set threshold, it allows sounds through. So but once that audio is below the threshold, it's like, let me say, it mutes the sound. But the traditional difference between the gate and the expand is that the gate basically shuts the signal once it goes below the threshold. So but the expand gives you a room to set how much reduction you want when it goes below the threshold. I think that's the best way I can explain it. But for the SSL channel, it's quite different. You have the range for both the gate and the expand, but if you listen carefully, you notice that even at the same level, the range level, once you activate the gate, it kills the audio very fast and automatically, compared to when you have it turned off. Once it's turned off, once this light is turned off, it means that you are using the expand engine. Once it's turned on, it means you are using the gate engine, basically. So for those people who do not know how this works, I don't have a very terrible audio here, so I would have showed you the noise. Let's just compress as hard as possible. Let's compress. Let's bring up the level. Okay, at least you can hear the beat behind when the vocal stops singing. So let's just add shake it for your mama to the mama. For your mama to the mama. Shake it for mama. Shake it, mama. Shake it, mama. Okay, notice. To the mama. Okay, now so once it gets to that empty space, I can still hear the backbeat, the beat. To the mama. Okay, let me turn this guy off. For your mama to the mama. Okay, so now that space, let's assume I want to kill that audio. For your mama to the mama. So I can still hear the audio, but it's not as loud as before. So but if I have the gate still be the same setting, for your mama to the mama, it kills it totally. Like it kills it, like you can barely hear it. Like it's more aggressive. So I see the gate as a limiter, as I see expand as a compressor. You get, so a compressor basically bring down the level and still allow certain things pass, but a limiter basically crushes that signal and it's telling it you are not moving anywhere. So that's basically what the gate does. So the third aspect is the gain and the mastering area. So if you remember in Wave plugins, we talked about having input and output selectors, so you can see what is going into the plugin and how much signal is coming out of the plugin using your meters. So this is exactly the case here. So we have the input and output. So I can see what is coming into the. You can see what is coming out. If you notice, what is coming out is quite loud than what is going in. Pretty mama. So about is holding strong on 15. So pretty mama is holding strong on 20, minus 20 here, while it's holding strong on minus 15 here. So you can see the difference. So it's very important for you to know what is going in, signal going in and signal coming out, so you know that you're not distorting at any point. So the one important thing is this gain here. So in case you don't have good levels, you can as well come here and increase the gain. But just know that once you increase the gain, it affects your compressor. Your compressor hits harder, and all of those, sweet stuff happens. So now the next thing you have here is your analog on and off. So basically, like I said, this plugin is an emulation of a physical gear, a physical board, and they have decided to add this feature so it can make it sound as close to the board as possible. So when you have it turned off, it doesn't sound as close as possible, basically. So when you turn it on, it sounds close as possible. So for those people who have the ears to hear this, I can barely hear the difference, but I think it's there, but I can barely hear it, honestly. So I think that's all you have, and you have the polarity. So the interesting part is the fourth part of this plugin, which is the routing. So the routing is really interesting. So this is how the routing works. So it comes into this input here, and it shows us on the input area, it shows us the metering for the input. So it sends it to the dynamic processors, it processes it and sends it to the filter. The filter now sends it to the EQ. The EQ now sends it out. Here we can see it here, and this is our output fader. So let's do it by default first. Let's do the first one. So no matter what I add, if you notice, despite the fact that I'm adding so much processing on my EQ, my dB reduction isn't moving much because this EQ is not feeding into the compressor. The second route is when you have this channel activated. So what happens here is that the filter receives it first from the input. It receives it first on the filter. Then what happens next is sends it to the EQ before it sends it to the compressor. So basically, this is important for those people who like to EQ before they compress, or for those people who like to compress before the EQ. Any which one you love to do, this is very handy. So remember that you have to activate this first. Okay, let's play and hear what it sounds like. Okay, so let me take this off. Take all of this off. We don't need it. So now it is set in a way, the mode I already configured this guy now is set in a way that the EQ, the filter comes first, the EQ comes next. You get. So but if I do it this other way around, I activate this guy first, you notice that the EQ now is now sending audio into the compressor, and you can see that the compressor is actually compressing harder than normal. So that's basically, that's the two routing system. So the third one is the filter dynamic, then EQ. Remember the first one we had the dynamic filter EQ. Next one we have the filter EQ dynamic. Now we have the filter dynamic EQ. So what it's trying to tell us that the filter receives it first as usual, like the second one, but instead of sending it to the EQ, it sends it to the compressor directly. Then the compressor sends it to the EQ. So the EQ is more like the last chain of processing once this split button is on. So once you want that kind of sound, you activate this guy first. So if there's this low end that I don't want to be affected by the compressor, what I need to do is activate this split cut the low end, and my compressor is not going to be receiving any signal below 200. It's more focused to compress certain frequencies that you choose for it. So but if it's off, it means that this compressor is compressing all signals, like from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. You get. So but if you don't want that, you can click on split, and the compressor is not hearing anything below 200 hertz. So if I push it up, the compressor is not hearing anything below 300 hertz. So let's if you notice, when it was at 300 hertz, I was getting gain reduction at -6. So now I'm just getting gain reduction on -3. So let's play let's take it to 300 hertz again. You can see. So if I open it up more, you can see it's very strong at -6 dB. So basically this is the 3 routing aspect of the Waves SSL E-Channel. So there are other aspects of the Waves channel, which includes side chaining and all of that. It's very complex and can be very confusing. So until I understand that fully, then I'll share once I understand fully. So but for now, this is the aspect of this beautiful plugin that you need to know, and I hope you give this video a thumbs up, and do not forget to like and subscribe and follow for more videos like this. Thank you.